It's time for Last Call at the 1420 Sports Bar. Wind down your weekend as we discuss issues in the world of sports. Take a look back at the week that was and look ahead to some games of the upcoming week. Get a couple more at the bar and let's get into a little Last Call. All right, Last Call at the 1420 Sports Bar, brought to you tonight by SeatGeek.com. The SeatGeek app. Use promo code 1420pod at SeatGeek.com today and get yourself $20 off for your first purchase on tickets at SeatGeek.com today. Joined tonight at Last Call here in Southern Alberta, another Lethbridge guy like myself, John Easthope of the Double Digit Hockey Podcast. John, how are you doing tonight? Long overdue. We've been kind of mentioning this back and forth for a long time. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm good, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on.
John, just under a week into the National Hockey League playoffs and the season going on, you got a lot of every round was at 2-1. Going into today's game, you have the Carolina Hurricanes got to a 2-1 situation today, along with the Boston Bruins going up 3-1 as well. Has there been any surprises thus far in the National Hockey League playoffs that caught your eye? Went, how the heck is that team here?
Well, I wonder how the Islanders actually made the playoffs coming down the stretch of the season coming into the season. And then they came in this series and people were picking them. They were picking them to beat the Carolina Hurricanes. And I'm like, I don't think a lot of people watched Carolina Hurricanes hockey this season if you're picking them to beat. And well, it's gone how I thought it's gone. It's been really a one-sided series in my eyes. It's been some battles in games, but Carolina Hurricanes have been really good. But nothing's really surprised me outside of who's here and who's up in series and things like that. It's been pretty good hockey so far across all the series here, if you take away what the Stripes are trying to do to some of these games. But I've really enjoyed what I've seen so far.
The games have been fantastic. The first round of the National Hockey League playoffs are better than any other sport that there is. 100%. You talk Big Four about with football and baseball and basketball, which I'm not a big basketball guy. I don't know about you, but hockey, okay. This seems the first round of the National Hockey League playoffs, they fly and they mean it. And you just watch week in or year in, year out, how much better the teams that are in the playoffs compared to who are out of the playoffs. Like the teams that are out, they're not close. The teams that are in, they mean it and they're flying. Like every series that the teams, yes, the series aren't close. Some of you kind of had a feeling that Boston was going to walk over Florida, but they're right there at times. You go, wow, in the National Hockey playoffs, there's nothing quite like it, especially the first round.
Yeah, these teams dial it up. It's like they all flip a switch. People who follow my show know how big of a Flames fan I am, and I'm watching these first round series, and I'm like, the Flames are nowhere near this level in this competition, this intensity in these games. And it's every team. I talked how little I like the Islanders, but they've ramped up their play. They played really well to be in these games. You look across the entire Western Conference, you can't pick between any of those teams in any of those series. They're all close. They're all quick. We had tons of overtime so far. Dallas, Minnesota's put on an incredible show through all their games as well. Love it. It's the best. Absolutely the best.
It's crazy how much, like you said, how much these guys amp things up a lot and how they're just flying night in, night out, and everything's going. You look at that series lot that's going with. We kind of knew it was going to be a bang, tough series, kind of going with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning, and those. Yep. And the Tampa Bay is an older hockey team now. Like, it's funny, I was out with watching it because my wife's a big Leafs fan, as am I, but her and her family are much, much bigger than I am. And you watch how much older that team is in Tampa Bay. And she keeps talking about, well, Stamkos. I said, well, he's a little bit older now. Yep. And Hedberg and all on and on, how these guys are a little bit older. And Corey Perry, he's a little bit older now, but that team still finds a way to be gritty and go in, night out. And they're making a series that I thought was going to be a 5-gamer. It still might be, but that Tampa Bay team, man, that is something to watch, how they can how they stick up for each other and how they play hard for each other on a nightly basis, even though like the COVID Cup that they got, so you have like 1.5, the whole bit. But that Tampa team is still something to watch, and how they're right behind each other. That's how hockey should be played.
They're beating people with the mental side of the hockey game, right? They're beating teams it was their speed a while ago, and it was all that. They were quick, they were fast. Now they're playing in a different style now. They're playing quicker hockey without the puck. They're trying to use their experience to their advantage. They're definitely not quicker than the Maple Leafs, but they're able to keep up because they know where to go. They know how it's done. They've been there. They've done that. And that's really, really exciting to watch, and why they're still in these games. They need a couple of saves here, though, to stay in this series before it gets run away on them here. Getting Hedman back was key for them as well. But Toronto's played really good and have made Tampa Bay work. a better series than I thought it was going to be as well. I still have Tampa Bay until Toronto actually can beat someone. I still have Tampa Bay winning that series, but it's hard to look past guys like Kucherov and Stamkos because they've been there and they've done that. But that's a lot of hockey for those older guys on this team now.
Well, that's one thing the Leafs have always lacked over the years is not having those guys that have been in playoff situations. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have some guys who won in junior, won World Juniors on and on. The Leafs never had anybody who's done anything, but the addition of Ryan O'Reilly and then getting Schenn there, who's won a cup with Tampa Bay, getting them in their lineup, it helps a lot. And you look at that goal that that O'Reilly got last night. Late in the third period, there O'Reilly was the guy who was banging and crashing in front of that, and you can't disparage the flip on net that Nylander had. It was I'm not scoring here, but I might get a rebound shot on this, because when you get a shot on goal, you get three things: you get a goal, you get a whistle, or you get a rebound. And they got the rebound and score the goal late. And O'Reilly being that kind of a guy, and Schenn being that kind of the guy for the Leafs right now, I think it's huge for them right now going into that series with Tampa Bay, and it's 2-1 Leafs. I think that you're going to have Vasilevskiy. He's going to have a game. He hasn't been good so far, in my opinion. But eventually Vasilevskiy is going to have that game in the playoffs. So I think it'd be in the Leafs' best interest to win the hockey game tomorrow night and maybe go to a 3-1. Because if you go to 2-2, anything could happen in that series.
That Ryan O'Reilly pickup from Toronto is probably the best one at around the trade deadline for me. He puts everyone in this perfect spot in that lineup as well. They slot a lot better with O'Reilly in there. And it's just small little plays. You watch him on that face-off, how he plays that face-off, and he just sneaks to the net, and he gets himself a nice little rebound. Perfect goal. It just shows the will to win and the want to win and pulling these guys along. And you know that these guys are playing for O'Reilly and vice versa here with those moves. And I'm not a Maple Leafs guy, and I hate giving them credit but they deserve the credit because they're sticking with their game plan. They're not letting. It would have been really easy yesterday for Toronto to fold in that third period. It would have been really easy. Tampa Bay's got us on this one, but they didn't quit, and it shows through the entire lineup. O'Reilly makes a difference. Schenn makes a difference, and then other guys are saying, hey, wait a minute, he's doing it, I've got to do it, and they work hard. They're making Vasilevskiy work, and they're showing that Tampa Bay has deficiencies on the back end. The trick now, you got to keep doing it for games over and over and over here. You still got to win 2 more against this group. They won't quit either. That's going to be a good series at the end here.
Year in, year out, John, you have the National Hockey League. The playoffs are tough, and officiating is hard. I umpire baseball, so I know what officiating can be, and being an arbiter out there. And officiating is hard. This year, it seems to me there's been a lot more, especially in the first round, there's been a lot more of a focus on the bad calls in the National Hockey League, things going to replay. And with the replay that we have now, and we become more used to referees making calls and getting a makeup, I guess, getting like, well, we got it wrong. We can just go to the replay and say, okay, we got this wrong. There was two calls last night that went both against Tampa Bay in that series, or in that game last night. One was the quick whistle, I think it was the second period, and then the non-call, which I think was the right call. I want your thoughts on this. The Morgan Riley hit on I can't think of his name right now. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Played for Spokane Chiefs, and it doesn't much matter. But
I can't think of it either.
And then the brawl, the mini brawl happened on and on in the second or in the third period there. What's your thoughts on the officiating so far in the National Hockey League playoffs?
Okay, this is a great conversation and a great topic to have. I've had it on Twitter. I've had it out on Twitter. I don't like to ref shame is what I call it. I think it's too easy to blame the refs for these calls, but these refs are making it really easy to go down that path, making it the ref show, the zebra stripe show, rather than letting these teams take care of business on their own. Let them battle it out. We saw that with the Hurricanes game earlier today. 8 minors through 35 minutes of play. Like, let's let these guys play and battle these games out. In that game yesterday with Toronto, I think the hit on that hit, the Riley hit there, I think that was the right call too. Let these guys battle. Let these guys have a bit of freedom to play hockey. We got to remember that hockey is still a physical sport. It's still a battle sport. Let them do that kind of thing. It was a quick whistle on the other one for me, but they're making it too easy to jump in there. We saw that high stick or lack of a high stick call in the LA Edmonton overtime the other night as well. They're making it too easy to blame the refs because they're just making their job harder than it needs to be. It is a fast sport. There is a lot to watch as they're trying to make these calls, but to make the call, video replay, and still get it wrong in some instances is mind boggling. And then you look at the no goal from today earlier. The Florida Panthers early in the game allow a goal to Boston, pokes it in there after the whistle, and it's allowed. And a very similar call yesterday against Toronto that wasn't allowed. And it's like, well, where's the line here? There's no consistency. And I think that's a huge problem for the National Hockey League going forward, is not just some of these bad calls, is the inconsistency of these calls. Let these guys play and remember what the sport actually is here.
And that's the thing, John, that I watch a lot, and I listen, like no matter what sport it is. And I talked with, I can't remember who it was. I think we do too many of these shows throughout the year, and you talk to a bunch of talking heads here and there.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you leave it in the officials' hands, you probably weren't going to win that game anyways. Go out and win the game yourself, and the officials shouldn't get involved in it. And if you're begging for something to happen, you were probably in trouble anyways. That's kind of how I face things, because refereeing hockey is tough. The game is so fast, and the way it's played nowadays, it's a lot different than it was 30 years ago when you can punch a guy in the face and you weren't expecting a call. Now it seems to me, John, that they're expecting calls a lot more when there's really nothing there. Like that thing last night with Riley, I still can't remember the guy's name who took the hit from Tampa. He's their best player, and I don't know why we still haven't Googled it or whatever. It doesn't much matter. But you just look, and to me, that wasn't a penalty to get like right off the bat. When I was watching, I said that's not a penalty. Why is the guy's arm up? The cross check to the face that Kucherov laid to Riley was more of an infraction than what the push into the boards was. Yes, it was a lot more dangerous, absolutely, but that was just a hockey play. And I think that these teams can't rely on officials getting everything right, because there's no way they're going to get everything right. And you touched on it for half a second there with that Oilers goal, the Kings goal that they scored in overtime, the high stick. The high stick was about 15 seconds prior to the puck going in the net. There was a lot of times that things that could have happened. I think it was kind of a weak take on Jonathan Toews and the Oilers coach, or not Jonathan Toews, on Connor McDavid to say something, and it was a weak take of the Oilers coach to say something after the fact when they had enough time to get the puck out of the zone and not give up a goal.
Too many times, too, these players are looking for calls, right? Rather than playing to the whistle. The Oilers had all the time in the world in that overtime to regroup themselves, deep in their zone, get that puck, pin it down, whatever they had to do to get it out. And they just didn't play to the whistle. They're too worried about the call not being made or being made. Leave that to your coach to do post-whistle or at the whistle. Leave that to those guys who aren't on the ice to do that, because you got to play to the whistle here. That cost the Oilers that game. Whether it was a high stick or not, play to that whistle, and the rest can make the decision later. Like, it's the reason we have a video review for things that are missed like that. It's just, you got to be able to play the game and play the game to the whistle, and the refs have to find that consistency to let these guys do it. I referenced that Carolina game earlier today, and there was a call within 30 seconds of the opening draw. You're setting that precedent so early in a game, and the standard is so uneven. You mentioned the Toronto Maple Leafs game, those two calls. One was way more egregious than the other, and we got the call on the one that wasn't as bad in our opinion here. It's hard to know what you're getting each and every game when you're playing, but these players are professional enough. Play to the whistle, play your game, and then and don't rely on the referee to make this call for you.
That's what, like, don't let if you need a ref to make or break your season, then you aren't going to win that series or the Stanley Cup anyways. It's one of those things I've thought for a long time. I'm not a big fan of the way the game slows down and the way the instant replay can slow things down, because it doesn't make sense. Like how an iPad can decide a Stanley Cup doesn't make any sense to me. There's a lot of things that happen on that end. John, right now the Edmonton Oilers are down, I think 3-0 as we record this show right now. They're down 3-0. I thought this was a must win for the Oilers. I thought this series was going to be very, very tough for them to win in 4 or 5, because you want to win it. You want to get your first round series over quickly, because the longer you go, the harder. When you get the next round, the next round, you don't want to play 28 games in a month and a half to try to win the Stanley Cup. The Oilers, they're in a must-win situation for tonight, I think. But even further deep into it, John, Are the Oilers in a must-win situation to keep Connor McDavid interested in staying in Edmonton?
I think so. I think it is. Like a lot of people were picking the Oilers to win this series real quick, and I think they were underestimating the Kings a little bit here. And the Kings
They're
came
good.
out and slapped them in game one. They got the opportunities and they made it count in game one. They did it again in game three, and they've come out here swinging early in game four here. The Oilers are in a must win because they gave up that home ice advantage in those first two games. You got to get that back. You got to go back to the other rink, and you got to hold serve there and split those games at least. Give yourself back that home ice at least. Winning will solve a lot of problems for a lot of people, and I don't think Connor McDavid is any different than any of us who want to win something. And I think it's beyond McDavid himself. You got Leon Draisaitl, who's going to have a contract expire around the same time as well. What does he think as well? So I think you have to win to keep these guys around. If you're not going to see success, then you're not going to see these guys stick around. And you see that with the Flames. You saw the exit interview with Michael Backlund. He said exactly that. He wants to win. And if you don't see a winning culture, these guys aren't going to stick around here. And the Oilers, I hate to be that guy because I'm a Flames guy, but they're in tough here. They've got to win these games. They've got to show McDavid some measure of success, Leon Draisaitl some measure of success. And if they don't, you are definitely at risk of losing these guys.
You know, you have McDavid's in year 8 of his NHL career, and he has nothing to show for it but a few Hart trophies and some Rocket Richards and whatever else are up on his medal, and nobody cares about those. Not one person at the end of your career says, "Hey, how many Rockets do you got? How many Art Ross?" Nobody cares. They want to see cups. They want parades in their hometowns. And for McDavid right now to not have a Stanley Cup, because Crosby, I think, got one in either year 3 or year 4 of his career. And yes, Pittsburgh was different. And you have Draisaitl. I think he's 1 year or 2 years removed from his contract being up. And you see this happening and you go, when are these guys going to say, you know what? Because if Connor McDavid wanted to be traded, he could be traded.
Yep.
No matter what, they'll find a way to make it. If he walked in to whoever the GM into or whoever the ownership is, or however that whole thing, that's been a mess in Edmonton for a long time with guys in and out, and they have an owner who owns Rexall and everything else. You wonder if McDavid said, you know what, I want out. We don't have a hope. We're going to lose Draisaitl. You're probably going to trade him because he's going to be up for a contract. He's going to want $14 million, which is more than I make, and on and on and on. And you hate to talk about money, and you hate to talk about contracts because that's just. But the talking heads like me and you are, it's one of those things. You go, when does McDavid go, you know what, I'm not winning here, and it's time to go. It's time to go because we don't have a hope in hell.
And it could be sooner than later. It really could be. It could be as early as an early exit this year. He could be like, I'm not coming back next year. It could be that quick. I think McDavid has a little bit more, I guess we use the word class here, has a little bit more class than to just ditch the Oilers. But at the same time, it's going to be like, I'm not re-upping here. Unless we see some success, I'm not re-upping here. That's 2 more seasons of McDavid to try and find something. This is the best Oilers team we've seen since 2006, and it's not even close. They have roster depth. They have great defensemen. Skinner, I think, has finally sorted out their goaltending a little bit here. Yeah. If it's not this year and you're not going to be able to do it this year, then what, right? What do you got to do next? And you talked about both of these contracts coming up. Both these guys are going to be 15 million plus players, right? They're both going to want to be paid more. They're going to want to be paid more than McKinnon are. They just are. That's just how it goes in players upping one another in these contracts here. Can you have both of them? Can you keep both of them? And then you have everyone else on that roster to take care of as well.
Yeah, you look at that Oilers team, how they basically got the Draisaitl contract at 8.5, I think it was, and that was a bonus. Like, that's a complete steal. How great he's been. He won himself a Hart Trophy and everything else, and that's a steal. And that's the only reason why they got McDavid at 12, which is a steal. He's underpaid, like as much as like $12 million is a lot of money to you and I, but it's an underpayment for sure for the Edmonton Oilers and for the National Hockey League, and you wonder where that could go. And if they don't do something, they're down 3-0 right now, and Skinner actually got pulled, which is too bad. Ex-Leopard Hurricane, ex-Swift Current Bronco, and that's
a mercy pull.
It's a mercy pull because there's a problem there in Edmonton. It's been for as long as, like you said, 2006, but you go back to the 80s. Let's get into your team, John. The Calgary Flames are in a situation now, man, that they are just absolutely, and it's the worst place you can be. And I have my family's out in BC, and they're Canucks fans, and the Canucks have been mired in mediocrity for a long time. And now you have the Calgary Flames, who have an old building, a team that doesn't do much. They have a coach that, well, people don't like, and then sometimes they do like. They just got rid of their GM. Conflict of interest there. I think it's what is, in my own thoughts, what happened there. What are the Flames, if you were John Easthope, if they made you king of the Calgary Flames, what do you do with that hockey team, and how do you fix it? What's your thoughts on that?
How do you fix? There's no fixing right now. There really isn't. The Michael Backlund press conference at the end of the season said everything that you need to know about the Flames. He was asked a question about re-upping and in the excitement going forward, and he had a pause of about 4 seconds. And then he went on about his he's not sure what he's going to do this summer, what's going to happen. And I think a lot of players are thinking that way around the Flames here. You put it up on the screen here. Mediocrity has been the name of the game here in Calgary for a long time, apart from 1 or 2 seasons where you have a really good regular season, but then nothing in the playoffs here. If you're going to fix this, you're going to have to do exactly what Don Maloney's been hired to do here, and that is take a deep dive on everything in the organization and decide the correct path. I mentioned on my show that the Flames are 2 things are missing from the Flames here. One is they have to reestablish a culture here. There is no culture around the Flames right now. It's a bunch of guys. We saw it all throughout the season in their up and down play, so inconsistent what they were doing. There was no culture, I felt. And then there's no plan in place. The Flames need to decide which direction they want to go. Whether that's
huge. They just insert player here, player here, and hope. That's all they've been doing.
It was. I've said a few times that they're not bad players here. It's just maybe a bad mix of players. And so you have to have a plan here. What's your plan going forward? Is it re-upping all of these guys and going back and hoping that everyone goes back to a norm of what their career trajectory has been like? Is it a rebuild? The owner here hates that word, and he won't allow the management staff to use that word around here. But it might be what's needed here. You might have to take a step back and retool the structure of this organization. You have 7 guys going into next season that are UFAs, and there's a lot of big names on that list. Backlund, Lindholm, Hanifin, Tanev. There's a lot of guys also signed long-term contracts with Weegar and Huberdeau getting their new deals coming in. You have to decide a direction here. And Don Maloney has to look at everything from the coach to the newest draft pick, up and down the organization. What do we have here? What can we do here with these guys and make a decision here? And then build something, because that's one thing the Flames have never done here. It always seems to be patchwork and chasing. 2004, they went to the Cup final. What did they do for the next 5 seasons? They chased it again. Then we had 2015, the Flames found a way to make the playoffs, upset the Canucks in round 1, and then got beat by the Anaheim Ducks. They chased that success for the next couple of seasons, and they try to do it again after last season's success, winning the division. We're being a really tough series against the Dallas Stars, and then unable to do anything in the Battle of Alberta. It looks like they're trying to chase it again. Gaudreau and Tkachuk left, and you try to bring in other guys to replace them, and it didn't work. So it's a bad mix of players here. We have good pieces, but you've got to reestablish that culture, and you've got to reestablish which direction you want this team to go in.
The worst thing you could ever do is to not admit your faults as 100%. Not just as a human being, but as a sports franchise. Yeah. And the Flames seem to do it. At one point, I think 6-7 years ago, when the Leafs went out and said, you know what, we stink. Let's get rid of all these old guys and let's figure out what we can do. And they went out and tanked it and fell into the Austin Matthews sweepstakes and ended up with him. He's having a bit of I don't think he's the guy to build a franchise around, in my opinion, but he's a great player, but he's not a all-time kind of guy you can build around. But the worst thing you can do is be a mediocre team, because what you're going to have is a team that gets the 15th overall pick. And let's be honest, when you're a 15th overall guy, you might as well be a second rounder. If you're a top 10 guy, you're probably pretty good. But at the end of the day, you can't hope that a 12th overall kid out of the Western Hockey League is going to help your team become a great team.
100%.
And then and now you with the salary cap and how it all works out, and you have to get free agents because you still have to compete. Well, most teams do. Some just absolutely don't. But like if you don't go out there night in night out and compete and give yourself a chance to win, then you won't get free agents, and then
Hmm.
you're just mediocre,
Hmm.
Sorry, and you're done. And that's what the Canucks have done, and that's what Ottawa fell into. It seems like most Canadian teams have fell into that situation, and you wonder why. Yes, it's hard to get free agents to come to Canada. I get it, the
Hmm.
tax system, the weather, and everything else. But you just wonder, like it's if I were a National Hockey League eligible guy, I wouldn't mind playing for a team with a passionate fan base.
100%. It goes back to that winning cures everything for these guys. The Flames got Blake Coleman in free agency after Blake Coleman found success in Tampa Bay because that team was on the cusp of doing something. They just won the Western Conference that year, didn't do anything in the playoffs with it, but he saw a path to success here. So he comes to Calgary, and now, well, he has to be in the middle of this mediocrity. But if you win, they will come, and if you build something, they will come. And that's the big thing that I'm using across all the podcasts that I'm on or my shows that I do is the Flames need to find a direction and finally build it. The New York Rangers are the example I use a lot as well. A
Oh,
few years ago,
100%.
they
That's a great example, John.
they
Great
put that
example.
they put that letter out and they look, listen, guys, we have to take a step back, and it's going to be a year or two of things you
But
don't really
that was
see.
a
And
quick rebuild. What they
it
did.
was. It's a really quick one. They just retooled on the fly. That's all they did. They got rid of aging contracts. They bottomed out. They got Lafreniere. They got Kako, and look at them now. They're one of the favorites here to move on in the series. A good Stanley Cup contending team, and that team is going to be around for a while because they're built the right way. They built themselves through the draft. They develop these guys, and then they supplement them with these guys like a Kane or a Tarasenko who comes in here.
Like that Kane hasn't done a whole bunch since he went there, and I
No.
thought he would do a little bit more. I thought he'd be, but maybe he had a great goal obviously in Chicago, but he hasn't done a whole bunch. But you know what, I can't see Patrick Kane not, if they get the second round, which I think that they'll end up winning that series in
I think
maybe
so.
5, maybe 6. I think they'll overtake the Devils in that battle of the Hudson. But I just think that team is going to be doing something good because you know what, they have a good goalie.
Yes.
And that cures a lot for. And I've said this since I was a goaltender, and I wasn't a very good goaltender. But if you show me a good goalie, I'll show you a good coach. And
Yeah,
like a
100%.
lot of these teams, like you look at the Calgary Flames this year, they couldn't get a save all year long.
Nope.
And I think the Oilers and that Battle of Alberta, like you alluded to earlier on, the Battle of Alberta broke the Calgary Flames goaltending last year 100%, because it's been a disaster ever since.
I think it broke more than just the goaltending, though. I think it broke a lot of what the Flames are
Franchise.
thinking, a lot of what they're doing. A lot of the guys are second guessing themselves, and it goes to the mediocrity. And then you have guys leaving and guys coming in. It was a perfect storm in Calgary to go the wrong direction, and that's what happened this year. They didn't get bounces, they didn't get things to go their way, they couldn't play up to their potential, and guys learned the hard way this season, and it's going to be a big off season around a lot of these guys too going into next season. So.
You know, John, I really like when like it was last June, I think it was, or no, it was July. So it was July when Goudreau said I'm out, and it was
Mm-hmm.
no, it was June, and Kachuk said I'm out. But then they made those deals and went out and got Kadri, and they went out and got Huberdeau, and I thought, you know what, this team is actually better. And they weren't, and I was quite disappointed with the way it all
Mm-hmm.
turned out. I thought for sure, because my mother's a big Flames fan. Like she said it best. She goes, they got to get new owners, they got to get a new building, and it's just what my 75-year-old mother was saying those things, and
Yeah.
she made it very simple. They need new ownership that gets out of their own way. They need a new building because players will want to play there, and they got to just get a revamped thought about doing things. I think it's that simple in Calgary.
I agree with your mom there. It doesn't even need a new owner. It just needs the owner to step out of the way. Let the guy do what he's been hired to do, and let him work the magic. Mackenzie Weegar also agrees with your mom, as he said in his exit interview. What can we do to what can the Flames do? He's like, well, we need a new barn first off, and then he went on with his press conference. Like the players know it, the management know it, the fans definitely know it. New building would breed a lot of things for would fix a lot of things for the Flames. But the big one is the ownership either needs to change or needs to get out of the way and let the general manager and the VP of hockey operations do what you've been hired to do. Otherwise, why are they there? Just do the job yourself.
let's get off the Flames for a bit because they haven't played for about 2.5 weeks. I think is whatever it is, Joe. They haven't been really playing all season long when it comes down to the way that season turned out for the
Yes,
Calgary
true.
Flames. Disappointing because I'm a Sutter guy. Like I remember watching it. Like I'm old enough to remember watching Sutter play at the Sportsplex. I still call it the Sportsplex here in Lethbridge. So that's how old I
Yeah.
am. But you remember watching them play for the Broncos. But let's get prediction time. What do you think is going to happen with the Stanley Cup playoffs? What do you think is going to happen? Who do you got going to the finals and winning the whole thing?
Oh boy, there's a lot that could happen here. I like that Dallas Stars series versus the Minnesota Wild. I like that to go
2-2
7.
now, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good series there. I like the Carolina Hurricanes to go far. I think Carolina or New York has the ability to upset a Boston Bruins down the line. I picked New York at the beginning of the season to be in the Stanley Cup final out east, but I'm changing that to Carolina. And I know they have the tough injuries there, but I like the way they're playing. I like the way that they bring their game to every single game. They make other teams play their way and not playing the other team's way. I really like there. So I'm calling an upset in the East a little bit here. I think Boston's going to fail a little bit here. And then out west, it's hard to go against Colorado. It really is. They looked really good last night against Seattle. I still have them going to the West final, but I'm not looking past either Minnesota or Dallas, whoever wins that series, because those are two really good built teams. Both get goaltending, both have depth there, and I see both of them. They could easily win that as well. But my Stanley Cup final is I have Carolina beating Colorado.
That's interesting. John, I'll let you answer Mike Burlon his question there. Is Calgary the most disappointing Canadian franchise?
Have you met the Vancouver Canucks?
There's that too. There is that too.
That's no bias. That's 45 years out there now. They've only been in the Stanley Cup final twice. They have a lot of the same problems Calgary has. The ownership gets in the way a lot. Calgary's giving them a run for their money. Don't get me wrong here, but and you get free agents there, but you're not getting the right kind of free agents to Vancouver. I don't know. I think Vancouver would have to take the cake on that one for right now.
Mike from the Craft Brewed Sports Podcast on the Belly Up Sports Network. They listen to their show. They make me laugh on a weekly basis. Anyways, I for some reason I still have. I don't know why. I don't know why I do this to myself year in year out for I don't know how many years. I'm an old Leafs fan, but I still think for somehow, some way, the Leafs are finally going to make a Stanley Cup final. I'm not saying they're going to win a Stanley Cup final by any means, and I don't like Boston. I don't know. I cannot put my finger on it. I don't know what it is, and maybe it's just my Boston or anti-Boston bias. I don't know what it is. I don't trust that team. They've only won the one cup with that core.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know that they have that kind of a team to win a Stanley Cup, and I don't know what it is. So I'm going to have the Toronto Maple Leafs in a Stanley Cup final. And I was big on Edmonton going into the playoffs, but now I don't anymore, there. Obviously, because they're might be down 3-1 tonight, so I shouldn't be that kind of a guy. But man, it's tough to bet. You look at what McKinnon did last night. Now he's flying, and that team's just going to get healthier. And they won one last year without a goaltender because that's the one team does need a goalie to do anything for whatever reason. I think that the Colorado Avalanche are right there. Like there's just the talent, their top end talent is so good.
Yeah, it is.
So Bowen Byram is so underrated in national because he plays on a team with Makar. If Makar wasn't there, Byram would be the best defenseman in National Hockey League.
Yeah, he could.
He's right there.
Yeah, he's really good. To answer your Boston thing, really quick, I don't think Boston has a lot of adversity over the last couple of seasons. It looked really relatively easy for them, and if they come up against any sort of adversity, it'd be interesting to see how they respond here. And Colorado, like people list off McKinnon and Makar and all these guys before they even get to Mikko Rantanen, who I think really helped stir that drink in Colorado. It's hard to bet against the Avalanche and what they're doing here.
Do you give the Leafs any hope, John?
Like I said earlier, until they do it, it's hard to pick them. It really is. But if they can get past the Bolts, that's a slain dragon. But what awaits them is going to be the bigger dragon in Boston. Can
that
they
kills
do both?
It. That's just like
can they do
you
Boston
go back 2013? It was 4-1, right?
Yeah, and you're asking them to slay two huge dragons in their history in one playoff. One's getting out of the first round, and then the other one is the Boston Bruins. If they can do it, it's going to be hard to stop them.
We'll get out of here. We ran a little bit longer. I
No
can
problem.
talk to you all night about hockey, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
do you like the way the NHL players are set up, or do they need to go 1 to 8 or division more like? Do you like the way it's set up now? Because I kind of have a because the Leafs Tampa series was set up since January, really, when it comes down to it. Do you like it the way it's set up, or would you change it up a little bit?
I grew up with the 1 versus 8 matchups, and that's what I
Yeah.
prefer. But at the same time, I'm not too fussy about this way either. I don't mind it. Other than a few we've seen, like the Tampa Bay Toronto thing, they've all been pretty good. They end up in really good matchups as well. I know good teams go home early, but you got to beat them anyways to win the Stanley Cup. I don't mind it either way. I would prefer the 1 versus 8 if you put a gun to my head, though.
Yeah. Anyways, John, thanks for joining us on Last Call here tonight. Let me hear all about, because I listen to your show all the time. I watch it on Shaw TV in the morning, which is it's great. No, I think it was like, hey, there he is right there on TV at Shaw in the morning. Tell us about the Double Digit Hockey Podcast, how it all came about, and what you got going on.
Well, it started out as a blog. I used to blog here and there about big events around the Flames and around the Lethbridge Hurricanes, the local team here. Then I got writing articles about the Lethbridge Hurricanes, threw them up on there. And then I had a guy say, what about a vocal version of this? And so I did an article, and then I talked about it for 20 minutes, and I put out the podcast, and it actually got a lot of views. And so I kept going with it, kept rolling with it. And so I kept talking about the Lethbridge Hurricanes, Calgary Flames, Western Hockey League stuff. And now I really try to incorporate a lot around the entire league into the show. It does focus a lot on the Flames still, but I'll try to talk a lot about the Edmonton Oilers, Vancouver, get these fans engaged here. It's just an awesome show, but a weekly show. I go about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour every week with certain guests. I've had good guests on there before. I'll float my own boat. I've had Chris Cuppert on before. People will know him. David Amber's been on the show. Just guys like that. And they're really cool guys to get on, just chit chat about their broadcast career. And then we talk some hockey stuff and events going on here, make fun of the Oilers a little bit and things like that. But it's just a fun little project for myself that I've been doing for a few years now. And you can definitely find the show on all your social media platforms. I'm on all of them. Just search the Double Digit Hockey. You'll find me, find my YouTube page as well. Or you can tweet at me on Twitter at VintageJohnny84. I'm there all the time, social media now, and it's just fun. I'm always up for a good chat if you're around there.
No, John, thanks very much for joining me tonight on Last Call. Because it's been, like I said, I've been mulling about doing it with you for quite some time. Finally reached out and we got something going tonight. We'll have to talk again for sure. Maybe when the playoffs come to maybe we get the Stanley Cup Finals, and we realized we were both wrong on who made the finals. That's just the way it always works out. No one's ever right on these things. So if we were right, we probably wouldn't be talking to each other. We'd be millionaires on Bodog or Bet US or whatever's going on out there.
100%.
Thank you very much, John, for joining us on the 1420 Last Call, second edition of this. Thank you very much for everybody's listening to the show. Watch tonight on YouTube. Make sure you listen to the show tomorrow when we have it up on our podcast accounts and everything else. So it's been a lot of fun. Anyways, take care of each other. More importantly, take care of yourself. Need you around. Keep you stick on the ice and don't swing at high pitches. And have yourself a great weekend and drive safely if you're going out after Last Call, folks. Have a good night, and we'll talk to you later. You just listened to the 1420 Sports Bar Podcast. 4 beer with sports talk and a whole lot more. We are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Let's get into it.